My dear Mustafa, I have now received your letter, in which you tell me that you have done everything necessary to support my stay with you in Sacramento. I have also received news that I have been accepted in the Department of Civil Engineering in the University of California. It is necessary, my friend, to thank you for everything, but it will seem to you as rather odd when I proclaim this news to you. And make no doubt about it, I feel no hesitation at all. In fact, I am certain that I have never seen things so clearly as I do now. No, my friend, I have changed my mind. I will not follow you to the land where there is greenery, water, and lovely faces, as you wrote. No, I will stay here, and I will never leave. I am truly bothered, Mustafa, that our lives will not continue to follow the same course. For I can almost hear you reminding me of our vow to go on together, and of the way we used to shout, "We'll get rich." But there is nothing I can do, my friend. Yes, I still remember the day when I stood in the hall of Cairo airport, pressing your hand and staring at the frenzied motor. At that moment, everything was rotating in time with the ear-splitting motor, and you stood in front of me, your round face silent. Your face hadn't changed from the way it used to be when you were growing up in the Shuja'iyya neighborhood in Gaza, apart from those slight wrinkles. We grew up together, understanding each other completely, and we promised to go on together till the end. But there's a quarter of an hour left before the plane takes off. Don't look into space like that. Listen, you'll go to Kuwait next year, and you'll save enough from your salary to uproot you from Gaza and transplant you to California. We started off together, and we must carry on. At that moment, I was watching your rapidly moving lips. That was always your manner of speaking, with no commas or full stops. But I had this obscure feeling that you were not completely happy with your flight. You could not give 3 good reasons for it. I too suffered from this wrench, but the clearest thought was, why don't we abandon this Gaza and flee? Why don't we? Your situation had begun to improve, however. The Ministry of Education in Kuwait gave you a contract, though it did not give me one. In the trough of misery where I existed, you sent me small sums of money. You wanted me to consider them as loans, because you feared that I would feel slighted. You knew my family circumstances in and out. You knew that my meager salary in the UNRWA schools was inadequate to support my mother, my brother's widow, and her 4 children. Listen carefully. Write to me every day, every hour, every minute. The plane's just leaving. Farewell. Or rather, till we meet again. Till we meet again. Your cold lips brushed my cheek. You turned your face away from me towards the plane, and when you looked at me again, I could see your tears. Later, the Ministry of Education in Kuwait gave me a contract. There is no need to repeat to you how my life there went in detail. I always wrote to you about everything. My life there had a gluey, vacuous quality, as though I were a small oyster, lost in oppressive loneliness, slowly struggling with a future as dark as the beginning of night. Caught in a rotten routine, a spewed-out combat with time. Everything was hot and sticky. There was a slipperiness to my whole life. It was all a yearning for the end of the month. In the middle of the year, that year, the Jews bombarded the central district of Sabha and attacked Gaza, our Gaza, with bombs and flames. That event might have made some change in my routine, but there was nothing for me to take much notice of. I was going to leave this Gaza behind me and go to California, where I would live for myself, my own self which had suffered so long. I hate Gaza, and I hate who is in Gaza. Everything in this murdered town reminded me of failed pictures painted in grey by a sick man. Yes, I would send my mother and my brother's widow and her children a meager sum to help them live. But I would liberate myself from this last tie too. There, in green California, far from the reek of defeat which for 7 years had filled my nostrils. The sympathy which bound me to my brother's children, their mother and mine, would never be enough to justify my tragedy in taking this perpendicular dive. It must not drag me any further down than it had already. I must flee. You know these feelings, Mustafa, because you experienced them. What is this ill-defined tie we had with Gaza which blunted our enthusiasm for flight? Why didn't we analyze the matter in such a way as to give it a clear meaning? Why didn't we leave this defeat with its wounds behind us and move on to a life with more color and enjoyment? Why? We didn't exactly know. When I went on holiday in June and assembled all my possessions, longing for the sweet departure, the start towards those little things which give life a pleasant, colorful meaning, I found Gaza just as I had known it, closed like the introverted lining of a rusted snail shell thrown up by the waves on the sticky, sandy shore by the slaughterhouse. This Gaza was more cramped than the mind of a sleeper in the throes of a fearful nightmare, with its narrow streets which had their bulging balconies. This is Gaza. But what are the obscure, unspecific things that draws a person to their family, their house, their memories, just the same way spring draws a lost flock of mountain goats? I do not know. All I know is that I went to my mother in our house that morning, and there I met my late brother's wife at my arrival. She asked me, weeping, if I would do as her wounded daughter, Nadia, wished, and visit her that evening at the Gaza hospital. You know Nadia, my brother's beautiful 13-year-old daughter. That evening, I bought a pound of apples and set out for the hospital to visit Nadia. I knew that there was something my mother and my sister-in-law were hiding from me, something which their tongues could not utter, something strange which I could not put my finger on at all. I loved Nadia from habit, the same habit that made me love all the generation which had been so brought up on defeat and displacement that it had come to think that a happy life was a kind of social deviation. What happened at that moment? I don't know. I entered the white room, calm. Ill children have something of saintliness, and how much more so if the child is ill as a result of cruel, painful wounds. Nadia was lying on her bed, her back propped up on a big pillow over which her hair was spread like a thick pelt. There was a profound silence in her wide eyes, and a tear always shining in the depths of her black pupils. Her face was calm and still, but eloquent as the face of a tortured prophet. Nadia was still a child, but she seemed more than a child, much more, and older than a child, much older. Nadia! I have no idea whether I was the one who said it or whether it was someone else behind me, but she raised her eyes to me, and I felt them dissolve me like a piece of sugar that had fallen into a hot cup of tea. Together with her slight smile, I heard her voice. Uncle, have you just come from Kuwait? Her voice broke in her throat, and she raised herself with the help of her hands and stretched out her neck towards me. I patted her back and sat down near her. Nadia, I've brought you presents from Kuwait. Lots of presents. I'll wait till you can leave your bed, completely well and healed, and you'll come to my house, and I'll give them to you. I bought you the red trousers you wrote and asked me for. Yes, I bought them. It was a lie. But as I uttered those words, I felt that I was speaking the truth for the first time. Nadia trembled as though she had an electric shock and lowered her head in a terrible silence. I felt her tears wetting the back of my hand. Say something, Nadia. Don't you want the red trousers? She lifted her gaze to me and made as if to speak, but then she stopped, gritted her teeth, and I heard her voice again, coming from far away. Uncle! She stretched out her hand, lifted the white coverlet with her fingers, and pointed to her leg, amputated from the top of the thigh. My friend, I will never forget Nadia's leg, amputated from the top of the thigh. No, nor shall I forget the grief which molded her face and merged into its traits forever. I went out of the hospital in Gaza that day. My hand clutched in silent derision on the 2 pounds I had brought with me to give Nadia. The blazing sun filled the streets with the color of blood. Gaza was completely brand new, Mustafa. You and I never saw it like this. The stone piled up at the beginning of the Shuja'iyya quarter where we had lived had a meaning, and they seemed to have been put there for no other reason but to explain it. This Gaza, in which we had lived and with whose good people we had spent 7 years of defeat, was something new. It seemed to me just a beginning. I do not know why I thought it was just a beginning. I imagined that the main street that I walked along on the way back home was only the beginning of a long, long road leading to Safad. Everything in this Gaza throbbed with a sadness that was not confined to weeping. It was a challenge. It was more than that. It was something similar to reclamation of the amputated leg. I went out into the streets of Gaza, streets filled with blinding sunlight. They told me that Nadia had lost her leg when she threw herself on top of her little brothers and sisters to protect them from the bombs and flames that had fastened their claws into the house. Nadia could have saved herself. She could have run away, rescued her leg. But she didn't. Why? No, my friend. I will not come to Sacramento, and I have no regrets. No, and nor will I finish what we began together in childhood. This obscure feeling that you had as you left Gaza, this small feeling must grow into a giant deep within you. It must expand. You must seek it in order to find yourself here, among the ugly debris of defeat. I will not come to you. But you, come back to us. Come back to learn from Nadia's leg, amputated from the top of the thigh, what life is and what existence is worth. Come back, my friend. We are all waiting for you.